Ryan slammed both hands on the steering wheel, so hard the horn blared into the empty night, and his boss, Victoria Hale, didn't even flinch. She just sat in the back seat, clutching a folder like it was the only thing keeping her alive, mascara tracking silently down her face. That folder contained evidence that would either save them both or destroy everything Ryan had spent 7 years building from nothing. But here's what nobody saw coming. The most dangerous person in that car wasn't the billionaire CEO. It was someone they both trusted completely. Drop a comment with your city below. I want to see how far this story is traveling tonight. And if you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. The envelope hit Victoria Hale's desk at exactly 4:47 in the afternoon. No name on the front, no return address. Just a plain white rectangle sitting dead center on her mahogany desk like someone had placed it with surgical precision positioned so that the first thing she would see when she walked into her office after 3 hours of back-to-back investor meetings was that envelope, waiting for her like a sentence. Her assistant, a nervous young woman named Priya, was already standing by the window when Victoria walked in, pretending to sort papers she'd clearly already sorted twice. What is that? It was on your desk when I came in from lunch. I didn't. I checked with security and nobody who had access to this office between 12 and 3. That's the thing. Ms. Hale. Security said nobody badged in. The cameras show the hallway empty the entire time. Victoria didn't touch it yet. She stood across the room and looked at it. The way you look at something you already know is going to hurt you. The way you look at a doctor's face before they say the words. She had built 20 years of business instinct on exactly this kind of moment, the moment right before the floor drops. She picked it up. Inside was a single photograph and 3 pages of financial documents. The photograph showed her lead financial officer, Gerald Marsh, a man she had personally promoted 3 times, shaking hands with a competitor she had been quietly outmaneuvering for 2 years. The documents showed account transfers, significant ones, routed through a subsidiary she hadn't touched in 18 months, routed through it, and then out the other side, into a she didn't recognize, authorized under an employee access code that she immediately recognized. Ryan Calloway's code. Her driver, her assistant, the quiet, steady man who had worked for her for 3 years without a single complaint, a single mistake, a single moment where she'd had to question his loyalty. She read the account number 3 more times. Then she put the documents back in the envelope, set it in her desk drawer, locked it, and walked back out to her assistant's desk. Tell Ryan I need to be driven home tonight. Not the car service. Ryan specifically. He's scheduled until 6. I know what time he's scheduled until. Tell him I need him at the front by 7. She went back into her office, sat down behind her desk, and for the first time in years, Victoria Hale had no idea what move to make next. Ryan Calloway had been on his feet since 5:30 that morning. Not because work demanded it, though it did, always, but because his daughter, Lily, had woken up at 5 with a nightmare she couldn't describe. Just came padding down the hall in her socks and pressed her face against his arm until she stopped shaking. He'd sat up with her in the kitchen, made her warm milk the way his wife used to make it, and watched her slowly come back to herself while the city outside the window was still dark. Lily was 7. She had her mother's eyes and her mother's stubbornness and a laugh that could break Ryan's heart wide open on his worst days, which was also the only thing that put it back together. Mara had been gone for 4 years. Brain aneurysm. Without warning, without time for goodbyes or last conversations, or any of the things people tell you that you'll wish you'd said. She was there on a Tuesday and gone by Wednesday morning. And Ryan had spent the first year after that, barely remembering to eat, holding down his job through sheer will and the terror of what would happen to Lily if he fell apart. He hadn't fallen apart. He'd chosen not to, or more accurately, he'd chosen Lily every single morning, which amounted to the same thing. 3 years at Hale Industries had given him stability, good pay, reliable hours when he planned ahead, and a working environment that didn't ask too much of him emotionally, which was exactly what he'd needed. Victoria Hale was demanding but fair. Cold, yes. Distant, absolutely. She moved through the office like weather, powerful, impersonal, leaving people rearranging themselves in her wake without quite understanding why. Ryan had learned early on not to take it personally. He did his job. He anticipated what she needed. He drove where he was told, carried what needed carrying, stayed invisible when invisibility was useful, and went home to his daughter every night. That was enough. For a long time that had been exactly enough. At 6:50, he was pulling the company car around to the front of the Hale Industries building when his phone buzzed with a message from Priya. "Miss Hale will be down in 10, she said to wait." He waited. She came through the lobby doors at 7:04. No entourage, which was unusual for post-event evenings. No laptop bag, which was almost unprecedented. Just Victoria Hale in a charcoal gray coat that probably cost more than Ryan's monthly salary, holding nothing but her phone and a small clutch bag, walking toward the car with her eyes fixed somewhere in the middle distance. He got out and opened the rear door. She got in without acknowledging him, which was normal. He pulled out into traffic. For the first 6 minutes, neither of them said anything. The radio was off. Rain had started coming down. Light but steady. The kind of rain that makes the city lights smear across the wet pavement into something almost beautiful. Ryan took the usual route. Left on Meridian, north on 5th, merge onto the Lakeview Expressway toward the North Hills, where her house sat behind its iron gates with its 12 rooms and its landscaped grounds and its absolute, total silence. He was 2 exits from the merge when her voice came from the back seat. Quiet. Almost too quiet to hear over the rain, Ryan. "Yes. Ma'am, don't take me home yet." He glanced in the rearview mirror. She was looking out the window, not at him. Her hands were in her lap, and she was holding her phone face down, and her jaw was set in that way it set when she was managing something containing it. Holding pressure on it, the way you hold pressure on a wound. He knew, in that moment, that something was wrong. Not wrong like a delayed meeting or a difficult client. Wrong like something underneath everything. Wrong the way structural things go wrong before anyone can see it from the outside side. "Is there somewhere specific you'd like to go?" Long pause. "Somewhere quiet, not private, I don't mean." She stopped, pressed her lips together. "Somewhere I can think. That has other people around. I know a place." He didn't ask anything else. Riverside Park at night in October was mostly empty, but not entirely. A few joggers. A couple walking a dog. The distant glow of the boathouse across the water where someone was always working late on something. Ryan pulled into the lot closest to the main walking path, where the lamplight reached the car and anyone passing would be able to see them clearly. He put it in park and turned off the engine. She didn't get out. He didn't either. The rain had lightened to almost nothing. Just a mist now collecting on the windshield in tiny drops that slowly grew and ran. 3 minutes passed. Maybe 4. "You've worked for me for 3 years, yes. Have I ever asked you to do anything that felt wrong to you? Anything that made you uncomfortable?" He thought about it honestly, because she'd asked honestly. "No. You've always been straightforward with me." Another silence. "Someone used your employee access code to move money out of a subsidiary account. A significant amount. Routed through 3 transfers and out into accounts I don't recognize." The words landed in the car like something physical. Ryan turned around in his seat, not all the way, but enough to see her directly instead of through the mirror. "When?" "The transfers happened over the last 6 weeks. The documentation was left on my desk this afternoon." Anonymous. "I didn't. I know you didn't." She said it without hesitation and without softness. Not to comfort him. As a fact. "Then why are you telling me?" "Because whoever did this knew exactly how to make it look like you did. And that means they know your schedule, your access patterns. When you're away from your desk, which systems you've touched. They've been watching you for months, Ryan. Long enough to build a shadow profile that looks convincing." He sat with that. Who else knows about the documents? No one yet. What about Gerald? Something shifted in her face. Just slightly, just enough. "What made you say Gerald?" "Because he's the only person on the executive floor with access to the subsidiary accounts, who's also had reason to be in and out of my workspace in the last 2 months. He asked me twice to hold packages for him when he was in meetings. Said they were time-sensitive client materials. Did you open them? No. Did you log them? I logged that I received them and passed them on. Standard procedure. Victoria closed her eyes for a moment. Those packages may have contained the physical documentation of the transfers. If your name is in the delivery log, then it looks like I was part of the chain. Yes, Ryan turned back to face the windshield. Outside, a pair of joggers passed under the nearest lamppost, their breath making small clouds in the cold air, completely unaware, completely ordinary. He watched them disappear into the darkness down the path and felt the strangeness of the moment settle over him, the way a crisis always arrives, wrapped in something mundane. How long have you known it was? Gerald. She was quiet, long enough that he didn't think she was going to answer. I've suspected for 8 months that someone inside the company was positioning for a takeover. Not a hostile one, something more deliberate, more patient. Someone who understood that the best way to remove me wasn't to attack directly but to erode. Quietly create liability. Quietly shift trust. And you've been trying to find them on your own. I don't know who I can trust. The way she said it, not dramatic. Not looking for sympathy, just the plain weight of it, hit Ryan somewhere he hadn't expected. He thought about the last 3 years. The way she moved through the office like something armored. The way she corrected people with surgical precision and never seemed to need anything from anyone. He'd assumed it was personality, power, the particular loneliness of people who've built themselves so completely that they've forgotten how to need. But, sitting in the dark in this car, with the mist on the windshield and the lamplight coming from the park outside, she sounded like something different. She sounded like something different. She sounded like someone who had been fighting alone for a very long time and was starting to feel the weight of it. What do you need from me? I need to know if there's anything else. Anything that felt off. Anything that didn't fit, Ryan thought. He thought about the Tuesday 3 weeks ago when he'd come back from delivering contracts to a law firm downtown and found his desk reorganized subtly, in a way that could have been the cleaning crew. Except the cleaning crew never touched his desk, because he'd asked them specifically not to. He thought about the email from an address he didn't recognize that had arrived in his work inbox with a document attachment. And when he'd opened the document, it had appeared blank, and he'd deleted it and assumed it was spam. He thought about Gerald Marsh stopping him in the parking garage 2 months ago to make small talk, which Gerald Marsh never did. Ever, in the 3 years Ryan had worked there, not once asking how Lily was doing, whether she'd started a new school year, what grade she was in now. The cold that moved through him then was different from the cold outside the car. He knows about my daughter. Victoria went absolutely still. He knows her name. He knows what grade she's in. He made a point of telling me he knew, and I was so surprised by the attention that I didn't register what it meant. He was establishing that he had leverage. If any of this leads back to me in a way that ends my job, Ryan stopped. Started again, because he needed to say it out loud. I'm the only income she has. I'm the only person she has. If something happens to my employment, nothing is going to happen to your employment. You can't promise that if the documentation looks convincing enough. I can promise that I'm not going to let someone use you as a scapegoat for something you didn't do while I am sitting here with the actual evidence in my desk drawer. That's a promise I can make. He looked at her in the mirror again. She met his eyes this time. Why does it matter to you? You could handle this without me. You could use me as a controlled sacrifice. Let the documentation surface. Let it redirect attention from you. Use the time that buys to move against Gerald on your own terms. She didn't look away, because it would be wrong. Because you haven't done anything except work hard and take care of your kid and trust that the people around you were operating in good faith. And you've already lost enough. He didn't ask her what she meant by that last part. He didn't need to. There was a file in HR that employees technically weren't supposed to see, but that everyone at the company knew existed. The way you always know, the outline of things that matter. He'd been hired partially on the basis of his life circumstances, on the particular quality of someone who has been broken and has chosen, deliberately and daily, to rebuild. Victoria Hale had read that file. That much was evident. Okay. Tell me what we need to do. She talked for 40 minutes without stopping. Not the way executives talk in meetings, not structured, not performed. She talked the way people talk when they've been holding something too long, and the weight is finally more than containment can manage. She talked about Gerald Marsh, and once the 8 months of small erosions, and the accounts and the transfers and the shell company she'd traced 3 transfers back through before losing the thread. She talked about the board members she suspected were being cultivated, not paid off, not yet but softened, positioned. Slowly fed a narrative in which Victoria Hale was a liability and a change in leadership was a stability move. She talked about Marcus Devlin, her ex-fiancé, who had spent 2 years inside her company as a partner before she discovered he'd been using that access to build relationships with her competitors, and how that betrayal had rearranged something fundamental in her, not just her trust in people, but her trust in her own judgment, in the part of herself that thought she could read people, that she knew who was safe. She hadn't talked about Marcus to anyone in 4 years. She mentioned his name once, and then she stopped. The silence up, and there was something Ryan recognized, the silence of someone who has learned to skip over the wound quickly enough that they don't have to feel the whole shape of it. You built the wall after him. She looked at the back of his head. That's an overly simple way to put it. Maybe. But am I wrong? A long pause. No, I understand that. Not exactly the same circumstances, but the impulse to close down. Decide it's simpler not to need anything. Let people see the surface and keep the rest somewhere locked away. He paused. It works. For a while it works really well. It's efficient. It keeps you moving. And then you're sitting in a park at night, telling your driver things you haven't told anyone. So, the silence that followed was different from the ones before it. Not uncomfortable. More like the moment after something has been said that doesn't need a response. I am going to fix this, she said finally. Not to him, exactly. Or maybe to both of them. I know Gerald Marsh is going to lose everything he spent 15 years building, because he underestimated the 2 least likely people in the company to take him down. A billionaire and a driver. I prefer strategic asset. I'm your strategic asset. You have access to documentation logs he thinks are buried. You have memory of interactions he didn't think anyone was recording. And you have absolutely no reason to protect him. Ryan almost smiled. He hadn't almost smiled, and he wasn't sure how long. Days, maybe. And you have the actual evidence sitting in your desk drawer, which I'm going to get duplicated, encrypted, and sent to an independent investigator before 9 a.m. tomorrow. Should I drive you home now? She considered it. Yes. But Ryan. She waited until he looked at her in the mirror. What I told you tonight, Marcus, the rest of it stays here, she nodded. Once the way she agreed to things in boardrooms. Clean and final. He started the car. He got home at 9:47. His neighbor, Mrs. Pacheco, who watched Lily on late evenings, was asleep on the couch with the television on low. Lily was in bed, but not entirely asleep. When Ryan looked in on her, she opened one eye and then closed it again. The way kids do when they're tracking the world, but don't want to give up the warmth of pretending. He sat on the edge of her bed for a minute. She had her mother's hair, dark and prone to tangling, spread across the pillow. Her stuffed rabbit, which she'd named Gerald, after some cartoon he'd forgotten, was tucked under her arm. He almost laughed at the name. He thought about Victoria Hale, sitting in a 12-room mansion that everyone else called impressive, and she probably called quiet in the way you call things quiet when you mean empty. He thought about the face she'd made when she mentioned Marcus, the speed of it. Practiced skip. He thought about the voice she'd used when she said, I know you didn't, not soft. Not warm but certain. The particular certainty of someone who looks at you and decides, without performance, that they see you accurately. He thought about Gerald Marsh asking about Lily in the parking garage, and the casual way he'd deployed that information like a hand of cards laid on a table. He thought, not Lily. You do not get to use Lily. He straightened the blanket around his daughter's shoulders, turned off the lamp on her nightstand, and went to sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that he barely tasted. He opened the notes app on his phone, and he started writing down everything he remembered. Every delivery, every reorganized desk, every interaction with Gerald that had struck him as slightly off frequency and that he'd dismissed because he'd had no frame for it. Every document he'd carried and every room he'd entered, And every time, someone had asked him to do something small that hadn't felt small in hindsight. He wrote for 2 hours. By midnight, he had 4 pages of notes and a picture forming not complete, full of gaps, but recognizable. The shapesweep of something deliberate. The outline of a plan that had required patience and precision and complete contempt for the people it was using as pieces. At 12:17, his phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. A text. "You were seen at the park tonight. Be careful who you're loyal to. She won't protect you when it counts." Ryan read it twice, set the phone face down on the table, picked it up again, and took a screenshot. Then texted Judd to Victoria's private number, the one she'd given him when he started driving for her. "For emergencies," with a single line, "it's already started." Her response came back in 40 seconds. "I know. Don't reply to them. Screenshot everything. Don't come in early tomorrow. Wait for my call." Then, after a pause, "Lock your doors tonight." Ryan looked across the dark kitchen toward the hallway that led to his daughter's room. "Already done," he typed back. He sat there a while longer in the dark kitchen of his small house with Hyde's cold coffee and his 4 pages of notes, and the particular weight of knowing that something had changed tonight, not just for his job or his career, but for something larger and harder to name. The feeling of having been seen by someone he'd been spent 3 years assuming saw right through him. The feeling of being inside a situation that was dangerous. Genuinely dangerous, with too many unknowns, and a text message from someone who knew where he'd been tonight. And underneath all of it, quieter but persistent, something else. The feeling that for the first time in 4 years, he wasn't entirely alone in what he was carrying. He didn't know what to do with that yet. He set the phone down, straightened the notes, and went to check that the locks were set on every window and door in the house. Then he went and stood in the doorway of Lily's room for a moment, listening to her breathe. Gerald Marsh knew her name, knew what grade she was in, had made sure Ryan knew he knew. Ryan stood in the doorway of his daughter's room at 12:40 in the morning and felt something settle in him, not rage. Not exactly, but something beneath rage that was steadier and colder and considerably more durable. He was going to finish this. For Lily. For the years of stability she deserved. For the particular kind of wrong that happens when someone uses an innocent as a weight. And also, though he wouldn't have said this out loud yet, not even to himself, for the woman who had sat in the back of his car in the dark and said, "I know you didn't," without flinching, and meant it. He went to bed at 1:15. He set his alarm for 5:30. He didn't sleep until almost 3. But when sleep finally came, it came without the familiar weight of fighting it alone. And that, too, was something he didn't quite have words for yet. The call came at 7:53 in the morning. Ryan was standing at the kitchen counter, watching Lily eat cereal, watching the way she held her spoon with her whole fist, the way she'd done since she was 3, and had never quite stopped, when his phone buzzed against the counter, and Victoria's private number lit up the screen. He picked it up on the second ring. "I need you to go to the office today. You told me to wait for your call. This is the call. I need you to go in, act completely normal. Do exactly what you'd do on any other Thursday. Don't avoid Gerald. Don't seek him out, just be Ryan." What happened? A pause. The kind of pause that means something happened that she's already processed and filed, and is now presenting to him in organized form. Gerald called an emergency board advisory meeting for 10 this morning. He's citing financial irregularities. He's moving faster than I expected. Ryan set his coffee mug down. He's going to surface the documents. He's going to try. But he can't surface documents in a closed advisory meeting that aren't already in the official record. And they won't be in the official record until someone submits them. And before he can do that, I need our independent investigator to have received copies of everything I sent last night. Did she receive it? She's confirming receipt at 8:15. The moment that's confirmed, Gerald has a problem he doesn't know exists yet. He's going to walk into that meeting thinking he controls the narrative. He doesn't. And me walking in like it's a normal day keeps him from knowing we've spoken. As far as Gerald understands, you are a peripheral figure who has no idea what's about to happen to him. The moment he suspects otherwise, he adapts. He's been adapting for 8 months. I need him to walk into that boardroom confident. Ryan looked at Lily. She had finished the cereal and was now drawing something in the condensation on her glass with her finger. Completely absorbed. "I'll be there by 8:30, Ryan." Another pause. Shorter. "The text you received last night, don't mention it to anyone at the office. Not even Priya." Understood. He put the phone in his pocket and went to help Lily find her left shoe, which was somehow always the one that disappeared. The office on a normal Thursday had a particular rhythm that Ryan knew, the way you know music you've heard so many times it lives in your body. The elevator bank busy between 8:15 and 9. The executive floor quieter by 9:30 when everyone retreated into their offices for calls. Gerald Marsh usually moving between the 4th and 6th floors before 10, always carrying the same leather portfolio that he opened for no one. Ryan came in at 8:32 and said good morning to the security desk and went upstairs and sat at his workstation and opened his email. 47 unread messages. Normal. He started working through them in order, the way he always did, flagging what needed action, archiving what didn't. His hands were steady. He was aware of them being steady in the specific way you're aware of your body when you're asking it to do something that requires not thinking too hard about what it's doing. At 8:51, Gerald Marsh walked off the elevator. He was a large man. Gerald tall, wide across the shoulders, the kind of physical presence that read as authority before he'd opened his mouth. Silver-haired. Well-dressed in the particular way of men who want you to notice that they're well-dressed. He moved through the executive floor like he owned it, which was, Ryan now understood, precisely the point. You don't take over a company frontally. You take it over by moving through it long enough that people stop noticing you moving. Gerald caught Ryan's eye from across the floor and changed direction. Ryan kept his face completely neutral and pulled up a document on his screen that needed formatting. Ryan. Early this morning, trying to get ahead of the backlog. Gerald glanced at the screen. Ryan kept scrolling. "You drive Ms. Hale home last night?" Standard Thursday schedule. "She seemed off at the event. Did she say anything on the drive?" "She was on her phone most of the way." Business calls. Ryan looked up, just briefly. The way you'd look up from work when someone's talking to you. Making it natural. "She mentioned something was wrong?" Gerald's expression did something small and careful. "Just checking in. She's been under a lot of pressure lately. We're all keeping an eye on things. I'll let her know you asked." "No need for that. Too fast." Then, smoothing it, just looking out for the team, he walked away toward the elevator. Ryan went back to the document on his screen and typed 3 words that had nothing to do with the formatting and then deleted them. He opened his notes from last night on his personal phone under the desk and added, "GM asked directly what VH said in the car. Corrected immediately when I offered to relay." 8:52 a.m. At 9:44, Priya appeared at his workstation with an expression that people wear when they're trying very hard to look like they're not delivering bad news. "Miss Hale would like to see you. Her office now." "Everything okay?" She just said now. He followed Priya down the hall to the corner office, and Priya knocked once and opened the door and then left them alone. Victoria was standing at the window with her back to him when he came in. She didn't turn around immediately. He heard the door click shut behind him, and he waited. The investigator confirmed receipt at 8:17. Still facing the window. "She's already found 2 things I didn't send her." He moved closer. "What does that mean?" "It means Gerald's financial movement goes back further than I knew. 14 months, not 8. And the subsidiary account he used isn't just routed through, it's been systematically hollowed. We're not talking about redirection anymore. We're talking about asset stripping." "How much?" She finally turned around. 11 million over 14 months. Staged carefully enough that routine audits wouldn't catch it. You need a forensic eye to see the structure. Ryan sat down in one of the chairs across from her desk because his legs made a decision that he hadn't quite consciously made yet. And the board meeting at 10 is exactly what it looks like. He's planning to present falsified documentation of financial irregularities tied to my decision-making. He'll request an emergency audit. The audit will be shaped by the documentation he provides, which points away from him and toward me. She sat down behind her desk. Except that the independent investigator is already ahead of the official audit by 2 hours. and she has everything in a protected record that can't be touched by anyone inside this company. So what happens at 10? He walks in. He presents. And I let him. She folded her hands on the desk. I let him lay out every piece of the story he's built, including the part where your access code appears in the transfer records. I let him do all of it. And then my attorney submits the investigator's preliminary findings to the board chair. Ryan stared at her. You're going to let him hang himself. I'm going to give him exactly the stage he built for himself and see how he performs on it. That's a significant risk. If anything in the timing, I have spent 8 months waiting. I am done waiting. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. It got quieter instead, which was more effective. Gerald Marsh has spent over a year treating Huntington like a personal fund and treating the people in it like instruments. He used you. He specifically chose you because you are the person least likely to have the resources or the connections to fight back effectively. He calculated that you were expendable. The word came out like she'd had to decide whether to say it. He was wrong. The room was very quiet. What do you need me to do during the meeting? You won't be in the meeting, Victoria. I need you here, at your desk, available. If anything goes wrong, if there's any indication that someone in that room is moving to pull documentation from physical files or the server before my attorney can intervene, I need someone on this floor I trust. Who would do that? Gerald didn't build this alone. He has allies inside the company. Not many. He doesn't trust people enough to build a wide network, but at least one person on this floor has been feeding him information. Ryan thought about the reorganized desk, the email with the blank attachment. Do you know who? I have a strong suspicion. She didn't say the name. He didn't push. So I'm at my desk. You're at your desk. You're working. You're invisible. She looked at him directly. Can you do invisible today? He thought about the drive last night. The rain on the windshield. The way she'd said, I know you didn't like it was a fixed point. Yes. The board advisory meeting started at 10:07. Ryan knew this because he could see the conference room from his workstation if he positioned his screen at a slight angle, and he watched through the glass partition as the 7 board members filed in, followed by Gerald Marsh with his leather portfolio and the quiet satisfaction of a man who believes he is the only person in the room who knows what the room is actually for. Victoria came in last. She sat at the head of the table. Ryan watched her settle into that chair the way a person settles into something that belongs to them. And he thought, Gerald has not understood who he is dealing with. He turned back to his screen and worked. He worked for 43 minutes without looking up, and he was on his 31st email when he heard it. Not a sound from the conference room, the glass was too thick for that, but from the executive floor's secondary corridor, the sound of footsteps moving quickly toward the server room. Not running, but urgent in the way of someone trying not to look urgent. Ryan turned his head. Diane Cho, third-year financial analyst. Quiet, extremely competent, almost never on this floor before noon. She was carrying a laptop and a portable drive, and she was moving toward the server room, with her badge already out. Ryan was on his feet before he'd made a conscious decision. He crossed the floor in 10 steps, not running, matching her pace, and came up beside her just as she reached the server room door. Diane. She stopped. The way she stopped was enough. I was just going to pull some files. Ms. Hale asked for Miss. Hale is in the advisory meeting, she asked before the meeting. Then she would have logged the request through me. I handle all of Ms. Hale's file requests on this floor. He kept his voice completely even. What's the request number? Her face did several things in rapid succession. She told me verbally, it wasn't. That's not standard procedure. You know that. He looked at the portable drive in her hand. Why don't we wait for the meeting to break and you can confirm directly with her? A long moment. She was calculating. He could see it, the same kind of calculation Gerald made in the parking garage. The same kind of assessment of whether the person in front of you is actually a problem or just an obstacle you can go around. She decided he was a problem. You're going to regret getting involved in this. Maybe. You don't understand what you're dealing with. I understand more than you think. She stood there another 3 seconds. Then she turned and walked back toward the elevator. Laptop under her arm, portable drive still in her hand. And Ryan watched her go and immediately texted Victoria's phone. Diane Cho just tried to access the server room, carrying a portable drive. I stopped her. She's heading to the elevator now. The response came back in 20 seconds. Thank you. Security has been notified. Stay at your desk. He went back to his workstation. His heart was moving faster than he wanted it to. Not from fear exactly. From the feeling of something real happening. The feeling of standing in the actual current of events, instead of being swept along by them. He pulled up the next email. The meeting broke at 11:59. Ryan knew because he saw it, the board members filing out, most of them wearing expressions of studied neutrality that told him nothing. Gerald came out third, and for 1 second he looked directly at Ryan's workstation, and Ryan met his eyes and then looked back at his screen. And in that single second, something passed between them, not a conversation, not an acknowledgement, just the particular current of two people who know that what just happened in that room has changed something, though the full shape of it isn't visible yet. Gerald walked past without stopping. Ryan waited. At 12:14, Victoria's office door opened, and she crossed the floor directly to his workstation and stood beside his chair and said, quietly enough that no one else could hear, "It went better than I planned." He presented, completely, laid out the whole structure. Your access codes, the transfer records, the timeline. He was thorough. Something in her expression, not a smile exactly, but adjacent. And then my attorney walked in at 11:43 and submitted 47 pages of forensic account to the board chair and requested that all documentation presented in the meeting be cross-referenced against the independent record. What happened? Gerald asked for a recess. He didn't come back. She paused. His attorney called the board chair's office at 12:01 and requested that Gerald be permitted to address certain discrepancies in the documentation. He's lawyering up. He lawyered up before the meeting ended, which means he knew. She looked at Ryan directly. He knew the moment the forensic accounting walked through that door that he'd lost. And he still tried to sit there and hold the narrative together for 2 more minutes, which tells you everything you need to know about what kind of person he is. What happens now? Now the board orders a full independent audit. Gerald is placed on administrative leave, pending the outcome. My attorney files with the Financial Crimes Unit this afternoon. She glanced toward the elevator. And Diane Cho is going to have a very difficult conversation with HR within the hour. She told me I'd regret getting involved. How did you respond to that? I said maybe. She looked at him for a moment, with an expression he couldn't completely read. You're not going to regret it. I know I want to. She stopped. Started again with the precision of someone who doesn't do this often and wants to do it right. What you did last night. Listening. Not performing concern. Not calculating what it meant for you. Just listening. She looked like the words were costing her something, but she'd decided to pay. I haven't had that in a long time. I know. That's not something I take lightly. I know that too. She straightened. Pulled the composure back around her, the way you pull on a coat, not because you're cold exactly, but because you're stepping back outside. Go home early today. Take Lily somewhere, dinner, a movie, something that has nothing to do with any of this. Victoria, that's not a request. I'll handle everything from here this afternoon. I need you clear-headed tomorrow, not sitting here watching me manage a crisis. He stood up. She was already turning back toward her office. Hey. She stopped. Thank you for saying what you said about not letting him use me as for saying it straight. She turned halfway. Not all the way. You earned it. And she walked back into her office and closed the door. And Ryan stood at his workstation for a moment, in the particular quiet of the executive floor at midday, with the fluorescent lights and the distant sound of phones and the knowledge that something had shifted in the company. Yes. But in something else, too, something harder to define, and then he shut down his workstation and got his jacket and went to pick up his daughter from school early for the first time in 3 years. Lily was suspicious. She came out of the school building at 2:15 and saw Ryan leaning against the car instead of waiting at the curb in traffic, and she stopped walking and tilted her head at him. Did something happen? Nothing happened. Get in. You only come inside the gate when something happened, or it's a birthday. It's not a birthday. So something happened. Nothing bad. Get in the car. She got in the car with the air of someone registering a formal objection. Where are we going? Where do you want to go? She considered with complete seriousness she brought to important decisions. Pizza. The kind with the thick crust, not the flat kind. Done. And after? What do you want after? Put. It's 50 degrees outside, the indoor one. Ryan pulled out of the school lot and headed toward the far side of town where the pizza place was that had the thick crust and the booths with the red vinyl seats that Lily had loved since she was 4. She chattered for the first 5 minutes about something that had happened at school involving a project Aunt who had not held up her end of the project. And Ryan listened and asked the right questions and made the right sounds. And gradually, the thing that had been sitting in his chest all day, tightly coiled, cautious, alert, started to loosen, just slightly. Dad. Yeah, are you okay? He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. She was watching him with Mara's eyes, that direct, patient attention that never looked like surveillance but saw everything. I'm good, Lil. You look like you do when you're thinking hard about something you're not going to tell me about. I'm thinking about whether to get the pepperoni or the sausage. You always get pepperoni. That's not a decision. Then I'm thinking about work stuff that is very boring and already handled. She accepted this with mild skepticism. The way she accepted most things she didn't entirely believe. Filing it away for later. Is your work stuff okay? Yeah. It's going to be fine. Is your boss okay? The one that's scary? Ryan almost laughed. She's not scary. Cassidy's mom saw her on the news and said, she looks like someone who would fire you for sneezing. Cassidy's mom doesn't know her. Do you know her? He thought about the park, the rain on the windshield, the voice that had said things out loud that he suspected hadn't been said out loud in years. Yeah, Lil, I think I'm starting to. Lily seemed to find this satisfactory. She turned back to the window and watched the city go by. And Ryan drove and didn't think about Gerald Marsh or Diane Cho or the advisory meeting or the $11 million or any of it for 45 minutes. And it was the most relief he'd felt in longer than he wanted to admit. He was back home by 8:30 with Lily showered and in bed and Mrs. Pacheco long gone, the house quiet in the way it got quiet on good evenings, not the empty quiet of bad nights, but the full quiet of a day that had ended with enough left in it. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open, going through the documentation notes he'd sent Victoria that morning, when his phone rang. An actual call. Victoria. Private number. He picked up. I should not be calling you this late. It's 8:45. I know. It's been a long day. How did the filing go? My attorney submitted everything at 4:30. Financial Crimes is fast-tracking the intake because of the scope. A pause. Gerald's personal attorney reached out to my legal team at 6 and requested a conversation about, and I'm quoting, a potential resolution that avoids unnecessary public litigation. He wants to settle. He wants to disappear. He wants to hand back money and sign documents and make this go away without it touching his reputation. Are you going to let him? A long silence. No. The word was quiet and absolute, and Ryan understood it completely. What he did, the money, is recoverable. Money is always recoverable if you have the right attorneys and the right documentation and the time to pursue it. But he spent 14 months building a case to destroy someone who didn't do anything wrong. He picked a person who was vulnerable, who had a child, who had already lost his wife, who had no reason to expect that the ordinary work he was doing was being used as a weapon against him. Her voice stayed level, but something underneath it wasn't. That's not something you settle. That's something you take to every available conclusion. Ryan was quiet for a moment. Okay, I wanted you to know, because this is going to become more visible. There will probably be press. His attorney will try to shape the story. I need you to be prepared for the possibility that your name comes up in coverage. My name was in his documentation. That's going to come out. Yes. And when it does, I want to make sure it's contextualized correctly. My PR team will Victoria. A pause. What? I'm not worried about my name in coverage. I'm not going to break under press. I've had worse things than having my name in a story that ultimately clears me. He paused. What I need to know is whether you're okay." The silence that followed was different from the strategic pauses. It was the kind of silence that comes from not expecting the question. She stopped. "Because I think you've been managing things alone for so long that you've gotten very good at presenting okay without it being a full description." Another long pause. "It's been a long 8 months. You don't have to keep presenting okay when it's just me." "Ryan, I mean that practically. Not I just mean that whatever is actually going on, you can say it out loud. I'm not going to take it somewhere." The quiet stretched. "I'm tired." It came out simply, without framing, without apology. "I'm genuinely tired. Not of the work, of the vigilance, of never being able to turn it off, of spending every day in a room where I've apparently been wrong about at least one person and probably several more." "How long has it been since you took a full day completely off?" "Define fully off." "No phone, no email, no attorneys." "I don't think I've done that since." She stopped. "I'm not sure I've done that since Marcus. That's 4 years. I'm aware. That's not sustainable. I know. You should take Saturday. That's completely off. Not manageable. Completely." Another pause, shorter. "I don't know what I'd do with a completely off day. Figure out what you used to do before everything became something to manage." He thought about it. "Or just sleep. Sleep for 12 hours and eat food someone else makes, and don't make a single decision that matters." You make that sound very simple. It's not simple. But you should try it. He could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. Steady. Thinking. "The thing you said in the car. That I built a wall after Marcus. Yeah, you were right. And I've known it's true for a while. Knowing something is true and actually moving around it are different things. They are. I'm not sure I know how to move around it anymore. I've had it up so long, I've forgotten what was on the other side." Ryan looked at the kitchen table. At the notes he'd taken at midnight, at the coffee mug beside his laptop that had gone cold without him noticing. "You remember a little bit. Or you wouldn't have said anything in the car last night." A long pause. "Maybe. Not maybe. You said it because part of you knew it was safe to. That part hasn't forgotten." The silence on the line was warm and careful. The kind of silence between two people who have just said something real and are deciding what to do with the reality of it. "I should let you go. It's late. Get some sleep." "Victoria, I'll try. Take Saturday. I'll think about it." That's not the same thing as yes. "Good night, Ryan." He almost smiled again. "Good night." He set the phone down and sat in the quiet kitchen for a while. Outside, the city was doing what it always did, moving. Lit up, indifferent to the particular lives being lived inside its buildings and houses. He thought about Lily saying she looks like someone who would fire you for sneezing. And he thought about Victoria saying, "I don't know what I'd do with a completely off day." And he thought about the gap between how people look from the outside and what they're carrying inside, and how you could work beside someone for 3 years and have no idea what was actually happening. And then he thought about how that was exactly what Gerald Marsh had counted on. Gerald had counted on people seeing surfaces, had counted on Ryan being invisible, on Victoria being isolated, on the assumption that powerful people are untouchable and peripheral people are useful only as instruments. He'd been wrong about both of them. He'd been wrong because he'd looked at Ryan and seen an expendable piece, when Ryan was someone who had spent 4 years learning that you do not get to take what matters from people and walk away clean. And he'd looked at Victoria and seen a fortress, when Victoria was someone who had spent 4 years building a fortress. Because the last time she'd let anyone pass the gates, she'd paid for it in ways that Gerald, comfortable in his long scheme, couldn't begin to calculate. Ryan closed his laptop. He went to check the locks on the doors and windows. Habit now. A new habit that he suspected would fade eventually, but hadn't yet, and he stood for a moment in the dark hallway outside Lily's room. Listening, she was deeply, soundly asleep. Gerald Marsh knew her name. Past tense, Ryan thought. Past tense, because by this time tomorrow, Gerald Marsh would be managing a set of problems that left no bandwidth for anything else. He went to bed. He slept better than he had in months, and he didn't know whether to attribute that to exhaustion or to the specific gravity of having moved, finally, from waiting to doing or to something else entirely. Something he wasn't quite ready to name yet, that had to do with a voice on the phone that had said I'm tired without armor around it, and had let him hear it. Friday came in cold and fast. Ryan was at his desk by 8:15, coffee in hand, email open, and already aware that the office felt different. Not louder, if anything, it was quieter. But the quality of the quiet was different. The kind of quiet that settles into a space when everyone knows something has happened, but no one has been officially told what. So they're all performing normal while vibrating at a slightly higher frequency. Gerald Marsh's office was dark. It had been dark when Ryan arrived, and it stayed dark all morning, and nobody mentioned it, which meant everybody noticed it. Priya came by his workstation at 8:44. Did you hear anything about yesterday? I was here yesterday. About the meeting. About why Gerald didn't come back after the recess. Priya. He kept his eyes on the screen. What did Miss Hale tell the team? She sent an email at 7 this morning. Said there's an ongoing internal review, and that any question should be directed to HR. Then that's what I know. Priya looked at him for a moment with the expression of someone who strongly suspects they're being managed and has decided to allow it. He scared people, you know. Gerald, not obviously. But people were careful around him. The way you're careful around something that doesn't have edges you can see. Ryan looked up from the screen. How long have you felt that way? Since about month 4. But he was senior, and I was. She shrugged, the way people shrug at things they've accepted, that they shouldn't have. You know how it is. Yeah. He looked back at the screen. It's going to be okay, Priya. She nodded and went back to her desk. And Ryan thought about the particular cost of that, of years, of being careful around something you can't name, of the energy spent navigating an environment where one person has made everyone slightly smaller by existing in it. At 9:03, Victoria walked onto the executive floor, and whatever Ryan had felt about the changed quality of the air, it shifted again the moment she appeared. Not because she said anything she didn't. She went straight to her office, but because her presence had a way of reorganizing a room's gravity. You knew where the center was. 10 minutes later, Priya's phone buzzed and she looked at it and looked at Ryan. She wants you. Victoria was standing at her desk, not sitting, when he came in. She had her reading glasses on, which she only wore when she working through something complex. There were papers spread across the desk in a way that suggested organized chaos, the kind of spreading that happens when someone has been processing a large amount of information and is arranging it into a shape that makes sense. She looked up when he came in. Something had shifted in her face since the night before. Not softer exactly, more settled, like a person who has made a decision they've been turning over for a long time and has finally put it down somewhere solid. Close the door. He did. My attorney called at 6 this morning. The Financial Crimes Unit moved overnight. Gerald's personal accounts have been frozen pending the investigation. Ryan stood quietly and let that land. He knows. His attorney knows. Which means Gerald knows. Which means she pulled off her reading glasses and set them on the desk. He is no longer in a position where he believes he can control the outcome. And a man like Gerald in that position becomes a different kind of problem. What kind? The kind that stops playing the long game and starts making short ones. She looked at him directly. I need you to understand that the text you received Wednesday night was not a one-time thing. Someone sent that message specifically to warn you away from me, to make you feel exposed, surveilled, vulnerable. And that kind of pressure doesn't stop, because the scheme is unraveling. It gets worse. Ryan had already known this. He'd known it the way you know something in the back of your body before your mind has fully articulated it. What's the specific concern? Gerald's attorney cited your access codes in the initial complaint documentation they filed on his behalf this morning. Preemptive. They're trying to muddy the water, create enough noise that even when the forensic accounting clears you, there's a residual question mark that follows you. That's the play now. He can't win. So he's trying to make sure you lose something on the way out. My job, your reputation, your ability to get another job in this industry if things go wrong here. She stopped. Started again carefully. The kind of doubt that follows a person. That makes a hiring manager pause. That makes someone wonder, even if the formal record is clear. Ryan thought about Lily. About the school and the stability and the 4 years of building something solid enough to stand on. He picked me specifically because he thought I had the least to fight back with. Yes, he was calculating that even if the scheme failed, the damage to me would be real and lasting enough to make me what? A cautionary tale? Proof that getting involved with whatever was happening in this company costs you? He was calculating that you'd be too worried about your daughter to push back. That you'd take the hit quietly and move on because you couldn't afford not to. The anger that moved through Ryan then was not hot. It was exactly the temperature of the thing he'd felt standing in Lily's doorway at midnight 2 nights ago. Cold and durable, and extremely precise in its direction. So what are we doing about it? My attorney is filing a counter-complaint this morning that establishes a documented timeline of Gerald's use of your credentials, proving not just that you didn't authorize the transactions, but that your access was actively exploited without your knowledge. It also establishes that the anonymous tip sent to your phone constitutes potential witness intimidation. Witness intimidation. Does that change the scope of the legal action? Significantly. Something in her expression. Not satisfaction, she wasn't someone who performed satisfaction. But certainty. The face of someone who is several moves into a game and can see where it ends. Gerald Marsh came after the wrong 2 people. He came after someone he thought was powerless and someone he thought was isolated. Yes. And he didn't account for what happens when those 2 people are in the same car. She looked at him for a long moment. No, he didn't. The documents arrived at Ryan's workstation at 11:15. A sealed envelope from the legal team, hand-delivered by a paralegal he'd never seen before. Inside was a formal statement drafted on his behalf that he needed to review. Sign and return by end of day. He read it through twice. It was thorough. Specific. It named dates and access timestamps and delivery logs and the parking garage conversation in which Gerald had mentioned Lily's name and grade. It named the blank attachment email. It named the reorganized desk. It named the 2 packages he'd received and logged and forwarded. It named everything he'd written down at midnight in the kitchen. He signed it. He was sealing the envelope when his personal phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. Different from Wednesday's. The text read, "You should ask Victoria Hale what happened to the last person who trusted her completely. Ask her about Daniel Reyes." He stared at the message for 10 seconds. Then he put the phone in his pocket, walked the signed envelope to the paralegal, and went back to his desk and typed the name into a search engine on his personal phone. Under the desk with the screen angled away, Daniel Reyes, Senior VP of Operations, Hale Industries, resigned 18 months ago. There were 2 brief mentions in industry publications, one noting his departure as part of a restructuring, one in a finance blog speculating about the circumstances, which described him as a close confidant of Victoria Hale, who had left suddenly and without a public statement. Nothing else. Ryan put the phone away. He thought about it through his lunch, which he ate at his desk, a sandwich from the building cafe, eaten in 4 minutes because he wasn't particularly hungry. He thought about the way the text had been worded. Not did you know that which would be informing. You should ask which was suggesting that he didn't know the full picture. That there was something Victoria hadn't told him. That his trust was based on incomplete information. Classic destabilization. You can't attack the evidence. So you attack the relationship. You create doubt in the person who's standing with your opponent too and see if the doubt is enough to punt him sideways. He knew that. He recognized it. And yet, the name sat in the back of his mind for the rest of the morning. At 2 in the afternoon, Victoria's office door opened, and she came out and saw him at his desk and read his face with the accuracy that she read most things. What happened? Another text. She came to his workstation and he showed her the message. She read it without expression, which was itself an expression. Daniel Reyes. Yeah. She stood for a moment with the phone in her hand, looking at the message, and then she gave it back to him. Come into my office. He followed her in. She closed the door herself this time. She went to the window not to look out. He understood by now. She went to the window when she needed to be doing something while she talked. Needed the option to face away if the words got difficult. She didn't face away. She didn't face away. She turned around and leaned against the window ledge and looked at him directly. Daniel was my VP of operations for 4 years. He was one of the most competent people I've worked with. He was also one of the few people inside this company I considered genuinely close to. Not just professionally. Ryan waited. About 22 months ago, Daniel came to me with concerns about financial irregularities in the subsidiary accounts. Small discrepancies. Easy to overlook. He'd flagged them in an internal report. Gerald's accounts. I didn't know that then. I was in the middle of a major acquisition, and the timing was I should have acted on it immediately. Instead, I asked him to document everything and bring it to the next quarterly review. She stopped, pressed her lips together. Daniel was placed on administrative leave 2 weeks later. The leave was initiated by Gerald, citing a separate performance issue that I another stop. Harder this time. I didn't investigate the timing closely enough. I trusted Gerald's HR rationale because I was managing 17 other things, and Daniel's leave seemed administrative, and I told myself I'd address it after the acquisition closed. And then, Daniel resigned. He came to me before he left and he told me he was angry. He was right to be angry. He said I'd made him feel like he was on his own when he'd brought me something real. That he'd trusted me to have his back and I hadn't been paying attention at the moment when it mattered. The room was very quiet. Was he right? Yes. No hesitation, no framing. He was right. I missed it. I was managing too many things, and I let someone who was telling me the truth feel like he'd been punished for telling it. He left the industry entirely. He's teaching now. Business ethics at a university in Portland. Ryan looked at her. Gerald sent this text to make me doubt you. I know. He wants me to think you'll do the same thing to me. That when it's inconvenient, you'll look the other way. I know that too. Is there anything else you haven't told me? Anything else in the history of this that would look different if I found it out from someone other than you? She met his eyes without blinking. Nothing that's relevant to what's happening now. There are things in the history of this company I'm not proud of. Decisions I made that were right on paper and wrong in practice. People I didn't protect well enough because I was focused on the wrong scale. She let that sit. But there is nothing I am hiding from you that affects your safety, your daughter's safety, or the integrity of what we're doing right now. I am telling you that as plainly as I know how to say it. Ryan held her gaze for a long moment. He thought about Mara, near the end, saying something he'd been turning over for 4 years. The difference between someone who's honest with you and someone who's just careful is that honest people tell you the things that make them look bad. She'd been talking about a friend of hers, some disagreement he couldn't even remember now. But the words had stuck. The words had the weight of things that are true in multiple directions. Victoria had just told him the thing that made her look bad. She hadn't had to. She could have deflected, contextualized, waited to see if he brought it up again. She hadn't done any of that. Okay, Ryan said. Okay, I believe you. She absorbed that without performing relief, which he appreciated. For the record, Ryan added, if Gerald had asked me to bring him something I'd discovered about financial irregularities, and I'd been put on leave 2 weeks later, I would have resigned too, and I'd have been angry. So would I. She said it quietly. I contacted Daniel when the investigation began. 2 months ago. Told him what I was finding. Told him I should have moved faster when he flagged it. How did he respond? He said he appreciated the call and that he hoped I found what I was looking for. A pause. He also said he was happy in Portland, that he'd forgotten how much he liked teaching. There was something in the way she said it, not grief exactly, but the weight of a thing you can't undo, that you've made peace with imperfectly. You're carrying a lot of things you can't fix. Yes, you can only fix what's in front of you. I know Gerald is in front of you. Yes, he is. The afternoon moved in the particular way that days move when the significant events are happening in rooms you're not in. Ryan worked through his task list, answering emails, coordinating a logistics matter for a board presentation that was now, presumably, going to look different than originally planned. He fielded 2 calls from executive, asking carefully worded questions about the status of the advisory meeting's outcomes, and he gave them the same answer each time. Ms. Hale's office will be communicating directly about next steps. At 3:47, his desk phone rang. Internal line. He picked up. Ryan Calloway. Mr. Calloway. A man's voice. Measured, legal, adjacent in its precision. My name is William Crane. I'm representing Gerald Marsh in the current matter. I'm reaching out to discuss the documentations associated with your employee credentials. Ryan felt his pulse steady in the particular way it steadied when he was in a situation that needed him to be very careful. You should be calling Ms. Hale's legal team. I'm calling you directly, as a courtesy. Before things become more formally adversarial, I have representation in this matter. Anything you need to discuss should go through Ms. Hale's legal team. Mr. Calloway, I want you to consider your position carefully. You're a single father. You've got a good job here. A stable situation. The direction this investigation is heading is going to create significant public noise. Even with a clean formal record, the kind of noise that comes from a case like this has a way of Mr. Crane. A pause. Are you calling to threaten me? I'm calling to. Because if you're calling to tell me that noise surrounding this case might harm my career, that is both an implicit threat and potentially relevant to a witness intimidation matter that my reponse is already aware of. And this call is being made on a company line, which means it's logged. Silence. I'd recommend, Ryan continued, at the same steady pace, that you contact Ms. Hale's legal team directly. Her lead attorney's name is Margaret Vasquez. Her office number is available through the company's public directory. He hung up. He sat for a moment with his hands flat on the desk. Then he picked up his cell and sent Victoria's number a text. Gerald's attorney just called me directly on the company line. I told him to contact Margaret Vasquez and ended the call. Call is logged on the company system. The response came back in 40 seconds. Perfect. Margaret is going to love that. Don't answer any more calls from unknown internal extensions today. Then you handled that exactly right. He set the phone down. The afternoon finished without further incident. He picked up Lily at the normal time, and she was in the kind of mood that 7-year-olds are in when something specific has annoyed them and they're deciding whether to report it. She reported it at the 3rd traffic light. Cassidy said her mom said that your boss is in trouble. Ryan looked in the rearview mirror. Cassidy's mom reads a lot of news. Is she in trouble? She's dealing with a complicated situation at work. Adult stuff. She's handling it. Is she going to be okay? Ryan thought about Victoria at the window, saying Daniel was right to be angry without looking away. Yeah, Lil, she's going to be okay. Is your job okay? My job is fine. Do you like her? Your boss? He considered this with the seriousness it deserved. I respect her a lot, and I think she's a better person than most people give her credit for. Lily turned this over. Cassidy's mom said she's mean. Cassidy's mom doesn't know her. You said that yesterday. Because it's still true. How do you know her if she's your boss? Bosses aren't usually friends. She's not a friend. He paused. Tried to find the right word for whatever it was. The thing that had formed over 2 nights and 3 days of something he didn't have a prior template for. She's someone I trust, and she trusts me. That's a different thing from friends, but it's not nothing. Lily seemed to find this answer acceptable in the way she found answers acceptable when they were honest, and she could tell they were honest. They got home and he made dinner pasta, which was Thursday's dinner. Had been Thursday's dinner for 3 years because routines were what Lily grew up inside of, and he'd learned that early, and they ate together at the kitchen table with the television off, which was another rule. Dinner without screens, one of the last things Mara had insisted on before everything changed. While Lily did homework at the table, Ryan washed dishes and thought. Gerald's attorney calling his desk directly. The second text message. The preemptive complaint that named his access codes. Each of these was the same move in a different form, put pressure on the peripheral person, the one with the least protection, until they crack or run or quietly withdraw from a situation that's becoming costly. Gerald still believed, at some level, that Ryan could be made to cost Victoria something. He was going to be wrong about that too. After Lily was in bed, Ryan sat at the kitchen table and opened his laptop and typed an email to Margaret Vasquez, Victoria's lead attorney, with a full written account of the phone call from William Crane the time, the wording, the implicit threat, his response, He copied Victoria. He sent it at 9:22. Margaret responded at 9:51. Thank you. This has been forwarded to the Financial Crimes Investigators and is being added to the witness intimidation file. You did exactly the right thing. Please continue to document any contact. Victoria's response came 3 minutes later, with no preamble. I owe you dinner. He looked at that text for a moment. Typed back, you don't owe me anything. Her response, disagree. But we can argue about that later. He closed the laptop and went to check on Lily, who was sound asleep with the stuffed rabbit, Gerald. He could never look at that name the same way, Gen tucked under her arm. He stood in the doorway. The thing about children, he thought. The thing that people who haven't raised one on their own don't fully understand is that they're watching everything, all the time. They're building their model of the world from what they see in the people closest to them. Every time Ryan had stayed calm when things were hard, every time he'd told Lily the truth in a way she could understand, every time he'd handled a difficult situation with the full weight of his attention, she was clocking all of it, filing it, building from it. He wanted her to build from something solid. He thought about Victoria's company and the $11 million and Gerald Marsh's frozen accounts and the forensic investigators who were now, presumably, working through the night somewhere on servers full of records. He thought about Daniel Reyes teaching business ethics in Portland, having learned the lesson of what happens when you bring someone the truth at the wrong moment. He thought about the way Victoria had said, I should have moved faster, not I didn't know. Not the timing was wrong, but I should have. The particular grammar of someone taking the thing fully rather than finding a comfortable place to put it down. He went to bed at 10:30. This time he slept without difficulty, and he didn't check his phone again until morning. Saturday arrived with the particular quiet of a day off that's been earned. Ryan slept until 7:15, which was late by his standards, and woke up to Lily standing in his doorway, holding a box of cereal and wearing the expression of someone who has been very patient. You said we could make pancakes on Saturday. I didn't say that. You said, we'll see, which is different from no. That's a generous interpretation. I've been up since 6:30. He got up. They made pancakes, the kind with blueberries, which required 3 bowls, and a technique Lily had very specific opinions about, and ate them at the kitchen table with the orange juice that Lily insisted on pouring herself, which resulted in a quantity of orange juice that nobody needed, and Ryan drank half of anyway. It was almost 10 when his phone buzzed. Victoria. Not a call, a text. I took Saturday. He smiled at his phone, which was unusual for 9:50 in the morning on a Saturday. He typed back, good. I don't know what to do with it. What are you doing right now? Standing in my kitchen. I made coffee. I've been looking at it for 20 minutes. Does the coffee need something or do you? A pause. Then, probably both. Ryan looked at Lily, who was meticulously separating her remaining pancake into sections of equal size by some logic he'd never been able to decode. He typed, Lily and I are going to the park later. The one by the nature center. Around 2. If you want to get out of the mansion and be around people who have no idea who you are. He put the phone down. Lily looked up from the pancake surgery. Who are you texting, my boss? On Saturday? She's having a hard time with her day off. Lily considered this with genuine sympathy. Maybe she needs pancakes. Maybe she does. His phone buzzed. Victoria, I'll think about it. He typed back, that's not the same thing as yes. A longer pause this time. Then I know. Then, 30 seconds later. What time did you say? Ryan's set the phone face up on the table and went to pour the last of the coffee. The morning went on around him, Lily finishing her pancakes. The sound of the neighborhood waking up outside. The ordinary full-bodied noise of a Saturday that had nowhere particular to be. He stood at the counter with his coffee and thought about the word threshold, the idea of a thing you've been standing in front of for a long time, and the very different feeling of actually walking through it. Gerald Marsh was not done, not by the measure of legal processes and formal investigations. There were months ahead of lawyers and documents and the slow institutional grind of consequence arriving at its destination. There would be press. There would be noise. There would probably be more texts from unknown numbers making implicit threats to people who decided not to be moved by them. But the shape of what was going to happen had been established. The evidence was in protected hands. The forensic trail was documented. The witness intimidation was on record. The moment Gerald's accounts were frozen, the center of gravity shifted permanently, and everything from here was aftermath complicated. Drawn-out aftermath, but aftermath. Ryan drank his coffee. Lily asked if she could watch something on his tablet. 30 minutes. 45. 45. And that's the conversation. She took 35. That's the satisfaction of someone who had successfully negotiated from an opening position. He watched her settle onto the couch with the tablet and the rabbit and the complete absorption of a child who has decided the morning is good. And he felt the thing in his chest that he always felt in moments like this, the specific weight of loving something that you are responsible for, that you would do anything for. That makes every hard thing worth its cost. Gerald had tried to use this. He had looked at Ryan's love for his daughter and seen a pressure point. He'd misread what he was looking at. Because the thing Gerald had never understood, the thing people who operate from calculation rarely understand about people who operate from something else, is that loving someone the way Ryan loved Lily didn't make you fragile. It made you willing to go further than someone's calculating their odds would ever go. It made the cost you were willing to pay a different order of magnitude than anyone who'd never stood in a doorway, listening to a child breathe, had access to. Gerald Marsh had brought a lever to a situation that didn't have a fulcrum he could use. Ryan finished his coffee, rinsed the mug, and went to get ready for the rest of the Saturday. At 2 o'clock they were going to the park. He thought Victoria might actually show up. He thought that if she did, it would be the first time either of them had occupied the same space without it being defined by a hierarchy or a crisis, just two people and a 7-year-old and a Saturday afternoon, and whatever that turned out to mean. He thought about that for a while. And then he went and told Lily to find her shoes. Both of them this time. And the morning moved forward into what came next. She showed up. Ryan had told himself not to expect it, had spent the drive to the park actively managing the expectation downward. Reminding himself that Victoria Hale was a woman who had spent 4 years building careful distances between herself and anything that required her to show up without a roll-to-up play. A Saturday afternoon at a public park with her driver and his 7-year-old was not a role. It was something considerably harder than that. But she showed up. He saw her car first, not the company car. A different one. Darker and quieter, parked at the far end of the lot closest to the nature center. She was already standing outside it when Ryan pulled in. Wearing jeans and a dark coat he'd never seen before. Her hair down, which he'd also never seen before, and the particular expression of someone who's arrived somewhere and is not entirely sure what to do with the arrival. Lily spotted her before Ryan said anything. Is that her? Yeah. She looks different than on the news. People usually do. She looks... Lily squinted with the assessment of a child making a serious judgment. Nervous. Ryan looked at Victoria standing by her car with her hands in her coat pockets and her weight shifted slightly forward. Like someone who is committed to a step and is waiting to see if the ground holds. Yeah, he said. She does. We should go say hi so she doesn't feel weird. He looked at his daughter. You're a good person, Lil. I know. Come on. She was already out of the car. The first 30 seconds were the hardest. They always are. When two people who know each other in one context meet in a different one and have to recalibrate. Victoria looked at Lily coming across the parking lot with the direct confidence of a child who has decided that a social situation is not complicated. And something in Victoria's face shifted, not a smile yet, but the preparation for one, the muscles moving toward it. Lily stopped in front of her. I'm Lily. My dad says you're not mean even though you look like you might be. Ryan closed his eyes briefly. Victoria looked at the child for one full second and then did something Ryan had never seen her do in 3 years. She laughed. Not politely. Not the managed professional expression that passed for warmth in board meetings. An actual laugh, sudden and genuine, that she seemed slightly surprised by herself. Your dad's being kind. I probably was mean. For a long time. Why? Someone hurt my feelings a while ago, and I decided not to have feelings anymore. It didn't work very well. Lily considered this with complete seriousness. My friend Cassidy did that after her dog died. She said she wasn't going to like anything anymore. But then she got a hamster and she liked that. Did it help? She cried a lot at first. But yeah, she's okay now. Lily looked up at Victoria with Mara's eyes. You just need something worth having feelings about again. The silence that followed was the kind that happens when a 7-year-old says something that lands with the precision of a truth that adults have been circling for years. Victoria looked at Ryan. He had no response that would add to it, so he didn't try. Should we walk? He said instead. They walked the main path along the water for the first 20 minutes with Lily between them, narrating the geese that she decided had a social hierarchy. The specific tree she liked because it had a branch at exactly the right height. The question of whether fish got bored. Victoria answered these topics with genuine attention, and Ryan watched her do it and thought about the difference between someone performing interest in a child and someone who had actually been reached by one. She had been reached. He could see it in the way she tracked Lily's face when Lily was talking, the way she asked follow-up questions that weren't performed real questions. The kind you ask when you actually want to know the answer. After a while, Lily discovered the nature center had a small pond with ducks and went to investigate. And Ryan and Victoria ended up side by side on a bench at a distance where they could see her, and she could see them. The silence between them was comfortable in a way that silences between them hadn't been before. All the previous silences had been weighted in the car, in her office, on the phone. This one was just quiet. Victoria spoke first. She's extraordinary. She is. She looks like you around the jaw. The rest is her mother. You don't have to answer this. It's okay. How long does it take to not get past it? I don't mean that. To get to a place where you can live inside it without it being the first thing in every room. Ryan watched Lily crouch down at the edge of the pond and extend a piece of bread toward a duck that was absolutely not interested. About 2 years before I stopped waking up, and the first second being the one where I forgot. About 3 years before a whole day could go by without it sitting on everything. He paused. I'm 4 years in, and there are still moments. But the moments are different now. They're not just loss. She's in Lily's laugh. She's in the way Lily holds her spoon. It stopped being only grief and started being also, I don't know, presence. Like she's still around in the parts of Lily I love the most. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Marcus isn't dead. That's different. Losing someone who chose to leave is different. Yeah. Sometimes I think it was worse, which then makes me feel ashamed. Yes, it's not worse or better. It's different. What you lost wasn't just a person. It was the version of yourself that trusted. That's a harder thing to get back than you'd think. She turned and looked at him directly. How did you get it back? He thought about it, honestly. Because she was asking honestly. Slowly. By necessity. Mostly Lily needed me to be present, so I had to be present. You can't stay inside the loss when someone needs your full attention every day. She pulled me out of it by just needing things. Breakfast. School pickups. Someone to listen to the thing about Cassidy. He almost smiled. And I think also by just deciding at some point that Mara wouldn't have wanted me to wall off. She was the most open person I ever knew. Living like she didn't matter, living like love was something I'd used up. It would have been an insult to who she was. Victoria absorbed this with the stillness of someone hearing something that reorganizes a thing they'd been holding wrong. I've been insulting Marcus by staying closed. That's what you're saying. Not insulting Marcus. Letting him determine the terms long after he stopped being in your life. She looked back at the water. That's a more accurate way to say it. You don't owe him the closed version of yourself indefinitely. No. A pause. I know. Lily had successfully gotten a different duck to take the bread and was now reporting this to them, across 15 yards at full volume. Did you see that? Did you see? He took it right from my hand. We saw. Ryan called back. Victoria cupped her hands around her mouth. Well done. Lily beamed at her with the totality of a child who has been seen and then went back to the ducks. And Ryan watched Victoria's face a moment after the unguarded moment between doing something and composing yourself after, and saw something there that he recognized. The look of someone remembering what it feels like to be in a world that isn't all stakes and consequence. Thank you for coming, he said. Thank you for the invitation. She paused. I almost didn't, I know. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 4 minutes. Lily said, "You looked nervous." Lily is perceptive. Yeah, she gets it from her mother. He glanced sideways. What made you get out of the car? A silence. Long enough that he thought she wasn't going to answer. I thought about what you said. About the closed version not being something Mara would have wanted for you. And I thought about there's no one who would have wanted this for me either. The people who loved me before all of this happened. My mother, my sister. They wouldn't recognize the person who's been running that company for the past 4 years. She said it without self-pity, just the plain weight of it. I got out of the car because I decided I didn't want to be that person for one Saturday afternoon. Ryan looked at the water. You can be that person for more than one Saturday. Maybe, not maybe. She almost smiled. You're going to keep doing that. What? Correcting my maybes every time. They stayed at the park until 4:15. When the afternoon started cooling fast, and Lily's fingers turned pink, and she announced that she was in the tone of someone filing a formal complaint. They ended up at the same pizza place, with the thick crust and the red vinyl booths, which Lily had apparently decided was her preferred venue for significant occasions. And they sat in a booth together, Lily on one side, Ryan and Victoria on the other, which Lily arranged with the efficiency of someone who had decided on the seating plan in advance. Victoria looked at the laminated menu with the expression of someone who hadn't been inside a restaurant like this in a decade. What do you recommend? Pepperoni, Lily said immediately. My dad always gets pepperoni. He says he's going to try something different every time. And then he gets pepperoni. That's commitment to a position. What do you usually get? Lily asked. At restaurants. I usually let whoever I'm having dinner with decide. Why? Because I spend most of the day making decisions. By dinner, I'm usually happy to let someone else. Lily absorbed this with genuine sympathy. Look, that sounds tiring. It is, sometimes. You should let my dad decide. He's good at it. Ryan looked at the menu. Pepperoni and sausage. Half and half. Perfect, Victoria said. See? Lily told her. He's good at it. The pizza came, and they ate it. And Lily talked about school with the completeness of a child who has found a genuinely interested audience. And Victoria asked questions, and Ryan watched, and the ordinary extraordinary thing of a meal between people who are choosing to be in each other's company happened in a red vinyl booth in a pizza stall place on a Saturday afternoon. And it was so far from how the week had begun that Ryan kept having small moments of it, catching up with him, the distance between Wednesday night's parking lot and this. Between the blank attachment email and the frozen accounts and Diane Cho and the attorney's phone call and all of it and this. After Lily had finished her third slice and was doing the careful section assessment thing with the remaining pizza, Victoria looked at Ryan with the directness she used for things that mattered. The press coverage starts Monday. He had expected this. What's the shape of it? Gerald's attorney released a statement this afternoon. I saw it on my phone before I came to the park. It's careful. It doesn't name you directly, but it refers to irregularities in employee-level access that Gerald's team discovered and attempted to bring to the board's attention. He's still trying to frame it as him being the whistleblower. He's trying to create enough ambiguity that casual readers walk away, unsure who the wrongdoer actually is. It's a credibility erosion strategy. He can't win the legal case, so he's trying to win the story. What's your counter? Margaret is issuing a statement Monday morning that includes the key findings from the forensic accounting, the 14th-month timeline. The $11 million, the use of your credentials without your knowledge or consent. It names Gerald specifically and unambiguously. The Financial Crimes Unit is also issuing a brief statement confirming an active investigation. My name is going to be in coverage either way. Yes, I won't pretend it isn't. But the context is the documentation is clear. Anyone who reads past the headline will understand exactly what happened. She paused. I want you to know that my PR team is available to you directly, if you want them. They can help manage any calls you get. If your name gets picked up by local outlets, I'm not worried about local outlets, Ryan. I'm not. I know what I did and what I didn't do, and the record shows it. What worries me isn't coverage. He glanced at Lily, who was absorbed in the pizza geometry. What worries me is Lily hearing it from Cassidy before she hears it from me. Victoria was quiet for a moment. What are you going to tell her? He'd been thinking about this since Thursday. The truth. Simplified, but the truth. That someone at my work tried to use my name to do something dishonest. That I found out and we fixed it. That sometimes adults do wrong things, and the right response is to tell the truth and stand your ground. Victoria looked at him with an expression that took him a moment to identify. It was respect. Clean and direct and without complication. She's lucky to have you as a model. I'm the lucky one. Lily looked up from the pizza. Are you guys talking about me? Yes, Victoria said. Good things or concerning things? Entirely good things. Lily accepted this and went back to the pizza. Satisfied, he drove Lily home at 6. And Mrs. Pacheco was already there for the evening. And Lily gave Victoria a hug that Victoria clearly wasn't prepared for the full body. Unconditional hug of a child who has decided someone is worth hugging and stood in it for a second with her arms at her sides before she put them around Lily's shoulders and held on. Ryan pretended not to see the expression on Victoria's face in that moment. He drove her back to her car at the park. The lot was mostly empty by then. Just a few cars left, the afternoon fully finished. She didn't get out immediately. I haven't had a day like that in, she stopped. Didn't try to complete the sentence with a time frame, because there wasn't an honest one. A long time, good or bad? Good, she said it simply, without hedging it. Genuinely good. Good, I don't know what to do with that either. With something just being good. Without a purpose attached to it. You don't have to do anything with it. That's the point of it. She looked out through the windshield at the dark lot. Ryan. Whatever happens with the press coverage on Monday, whatever noise comes from Gerald's attorney, I want you to know that your job is secure. Formally and completely. Margaret is ensuring that's documented, so it can't be touched regardless of how the broader situation develops. I know. I mean it. You came to me with nothing to gain, and you stood in front of the server room, you answered an intimidation call without flinching. She paused. You made it possible for me to fight this in a way I couldn't have done alone. Whatever comes next, that doesn't change. Ryan looked at her. You would have found another way, maybe. But it would have taken longer and cost more. And I would have been carrying all of it by myself. Which is a pause. Which is what I'm used to. But that doesn't mean it's better. No, it doesn't. The quiet in the car was the same kind they'd had in this park before. In different weather, under different weight. But the quality of it was different now. Less pressure. More room. Take Sunday too, Ryan said. I have calls on Sunday. Reschedule them. Ryan, 2 days. You said you haven't taken a full day off in 4 years. 2 days is not excessive. She looked at him. You're going to keep doing this too. What? Telling me what I should do without making it a question. I make it a question when I think you'll give me the right answer on your own. She almost smiled. Fine. Sunday too. Thank you. Don't thank me for taking a day off. That's a slightly absurd thing to be thanked for. You're welcome anyway. She got out of the car. He waited until she'd reached her own car and the lights came on. And then he pulled out of the lot and drove home in the dark and thought about almost nothing the whole way, just the road and the lights and the specific low hum of a day that had gone right. Monday arrived like a verdict. Ryan knew the statement was live before he got to the office because his phone had been buzzing since 6:45, not calls. Notifications. The particular vibration pattern of something spreading. He read Margaret's statement over his first cup of coffee while Lily ate cereal and Gerald's attorney's counter-statement while he waited for the school drop-off line to move. And by the time he got to the office at 8:20, he had a clear picture of the battlefield. Margaret's statement was precise, specific, and devastating. 14 months. $11 million. Employee credentials used without authorization. An independent forensic accounting record that had been submitted to both the board and the Financial Crimes Unit. It named Gerald Marsh without equivocation, and it contained a single paragraph about Ryan that was brief and total, that his credentials had been used without his knowledge or consent, that he had cooperated fully with the investigation, and that he had been instrumental in bringing the evidence to light. Gerald's attorney's statement tried to create smoke. Terms like alleged irregularities, an ongoing review of all parties, and our client maintains his commitment to transparency. It was the statement of a man who knew the numbers were against him and was buying time. The executive floor was electric with it. People who had been doing the careful, quiet thing for 3 days were now doing a different kind of careful, the kind of careful that comes with knowing that the shape of the situation has been publicly established, and they need to decide where they stand. Ryan sat at his workstation and worked. He answered the emails that needed answering. He routed the calls that needed routing. He was visible and steady and present, which was exactly what he intended to be, not because he was performing anything, but because the situation didn't benefit from him being anything other than what he always was. At 9:15, a woman he didn't recognize stopped at his workstation. Mid-40s. Business attire that suggested she'd come from somewhere specific for a specific reason. Ryan Calloway? Yes. I'm Sandra Park. I'm a journalist with the Financial Tribune. I'm doing a piece on the Hale Industries situation, and I'd love to ask you a few. I have no comment. Please contact the company's PR department. He went back to his screen. Have a good morning. She stood for a moment and then left. At 9:47, a second one, this one younger, tried a more casual approach, started with, "I just wanted to ask how you're feeling about everything." Ryan gave him the same response and went back to work. At 10:03, Priya appeared at his desk. "Ms. Hale would like to see you." "Is it urgent?" She said, "It can wait until you're at a stopping point." He finished the email he was writing, sent it, and went. Victoria was on the phone when he came in, standing at the window with her reading glasses on, and she held up one finger without looking at him. "Give me 1 minute," and he sat and waited. "No. Tell them the statement stands as issued, and we're not providing supplementary comment at this time." A pause. "I understand what they're asking." The answer is still no. Another pause. "Margaret, I've been doing this for 20 years. I know how to hold a line." She took the glasses off. "Call me at 2. She ended the call and turned around. She looked like someone who had slept on Sunday. Genuinely slept, not the managed, functional rest of someone who is always half alert, but actual sleep. There was something in her face that hadn't been there on Friday. Some quality of being slightly more present in her own body. 2 journalists tried to reach me on the floor. I saw the security report. I'm having them removed from the building. You handled it correctly. You look better." She paused. "I took Sunday. Yeah. It shows. Is that a compliment or an observation?" "Both." She came and sat behind her desk, which was unusual. She usually stood for the first part of any conversation. "Gerald's attorney called Margaret this morning. He's shifting the settlement offer significantly upward. He knows the forensic accounting is conclusive, and he's trying to find a number that makes this stop." "What did Margaret say?" "That we're not interested in a number." She set her reading glasses on the desk. He also, through Margaret, made a direct offer to Ryan Calloway. Ryan went very still. "What kind of offer?" $50,000. A non-disclosure agreement. In exchange for a statement that characterizes your involvement in the investigation as limited. The anger that moved through Ryan was the same temperature it always was with Gerald. Cold. Precise. Durable. He wants me to sign something that waters down my cooperation with the investigation. In essence, yes. He knows your testimony about the parking garage conversation, the packages, the attorney's phone call, the Diane Cho server room incident. All of that is documented and on the record with the financial crimes investigators. He's trying to buy a version of events that makes those interactions seem less deliberate. He's trying to make himself seem less calculated. If your account of the parking garage conversation is on the record, Gerald telling you he knew Lily's name and grade, the specific way he established that information, it shows premeditation. It shows he identified and cultivated a target deliberately. That's the difference between financial misconduct and organized fraud. And $50,000 makes that go away. He thinks it might. No. She looked at him. "I need you to think about it. I have thought about it." "No, Ryan, $50,000 is. I know what $50,000 is. It's real. It would matter." He kept his voice level. "And I'm still saying no. Not because I don't need the money. Because Gerald Marsh sat in a parking garage and learned my daughter's name and then used it as leverage. And if I sign an NDA that softens his culpability, then some version of that works. And I'm not going to let that work. He looked at her directly. Tell Margaret no. She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone and typed message. Done. She set the phone down. He's not going to like it. I know. This means the full record goes to the financial crimes investigators without any softening. Your testimony about the parking garage, all of it. Good. That's what the truth is. She looked at him with that expression again, the one from the pizza place. Clear-eyed and direct. You understand this might make Gerald's legal team more aggressive toward you. If they can't buy your cooperation, they might try to challenge your account. Let them challenge it. I wrote everything down within 12 hours of it happening. I have timestamps, Ryan. Victoria, you have a daughter and a mortgage and a life that was completely stable before I whispered 4 words in the back of a car. My life was stable in the sense of being quiet. It was also, he paused, found the right words. I was doing fine. I was keeping it all running, keeping Lily okay, going to work and coming home and not asking for anything more because asking felt dangerous. Gerald counted on that. He counted on me being so focused on keeping things from falling apart that I would flinch when he applied pressure, and I'm tired of the version of myself that flinches. The room held that. Outside the window of her office, the city moved the way it always moved, constant and indifferent, and full of people managing their own versions of this. Their own equations of what they can afford to lose and what they can't afford to compromise. Okay, Victoria said, okay. She picked up her glasses and put them back on, which meant they were back in the register of things that needed to be done. I have a board call in 20 minutes. After that, I want you to sit with Margaret's team for a full debrief. She needs the complete account of everything, from the parking garage forward, in your words, on the record. Can you do that this afternoon? Yes. It'll probably take 2 hours. I've got it. She nodded. He was almost to the door when she spoke. The program. He turned back. I've been thinking about it since Saturday. What you said, about the version of yourself that was keeping everything running and not asking for anything more. She took her glasses off again. There are people in this company who are doing that right now. People who come in every day, keep everything running, never ask for anything more because asking feels too risky. Parents. Single parents especially. People who've built something fragile and are terrified of the wrong pressure at the wrong moment. She paused. I want to build something for them. Ryan stood in the doorway. What kind of something? A support fund. Emergency financial assistance for employees in crisis medical, childcare, housing, paired with a formal advocacy structure so that if someone comes forward with information about wrongdoing, they have real protection, not just policy, actual documented protection with teeth. She looked at him steadily. I should have built this 8 months ago. I should have built it 4 years ago. I didn't because I was running the company like a system and not like a community of people. Ryan thought about Priya saying I filed it away because he was senior and I was, and then shrugging at the thing she'd accepted that she shouldn't have. He thought about Daniel Reyes, who had brought Victoria the truth at the wrong moment, and paid for the timing with his career. When do you want to start? I'd like your input on the design, the structure. You know what people at your level actually need that the people designing these things from the top never think to ask. I'll think about it. Good. She put the glasses back on. Think about it by next Friday. That's not a question. No, it's not. And then, with the precise, fractional expression that Ryan was beginning to recognize as her version of a full smile, go back to work. The board call ran until noon. Margaret's debrief ran from 1:30 to 3:45 and was thorough in the way that legal depositions are thorough. The same events turned over and over from multiple angles until every edge documented and dated and witnessed. When it was over, Ryan sat in the empty conference room for 5 minutes before getting up. The table was long and formal, and the chairs were the expensive kind. And he'd sat in rooms like this for 3 years without ever sitting at the table. He'd stood at the door, brought things in, taken things out, been useful, been invisible, been exactly what Gerald had calculated he was: peripheral, controllable, ultimately expendable. He sat at the table now and looked at the empty room and thought, not anymore. Not as a performance, not with anger, just as a fact, settled and complete. He gathered his notes, thanked Margaret's paralegal, and went back to his workstation. There were 14 new emails. He worked through them steadily. At 5 o'clock, he shut down his workstation and put on his jacket and took the elevator down to the lobby and walked out into the evening, which was cold and clear and moving with the ordinary traffic of a Monday that was ending. His phone buzzed. Victoria, how did it go with Margaret? He typed back, good. Complete. How was the board call? Long, productive. The chair is fully behind the independent audit. Gerald's allies on the board have gotten very quiet. Funny how that happens, Ryan. Yeah. What you said this morning. About being tired of the version of yourself that flinches. A pause. Then I've been thinking about it all afternoon. He stood on the sidewalk outside the building, with people moving around him in every direction. And he typed, I've been tired of a version of myself too. For a while. Another pause longer. I think Saturday helped. Good. Lily helped, she tends to. You helped. He read that twice. You helped, too, he typed back. More than you probably know. The response took a moment. Maybe we're even then. He put the phone in his pocket and walked to his car and drove toward his daughter's school. And the city was loud around him, and the evening was cold and clear, and the shape of what was coming, the investigation. The press, the program, the long institutional consequence that was going to take months to fully arrive, was large and complicated and real. But walking into it felt completely different from where he'd been a week ago. A week ago, he had been driving a woman home in the rain, watching her in the rearview mirror, trying to determine if she was broken or just tired. He knew now that she was both, and that both were survivable, and that the difference between surviving alone and surviving alongside someone was not something you could calculate in advance. You could only discover it by doing the thing you'd decided not to do, by getting out of the car when everything in you said stay put. She had gotten out of the car in the parking lot on Saturday. He had gotten out of the car 3 years ago, every morning, to take Lily to school. The cars were different. The parking lots were different. The getting out was the same. He pulled up to the school pickup line and waited. And when Lily came through the double doors and saw him, she raised one hand in the wave that was specifically hers, half wave, half point, entirely Lily, and he felt the thing in his chest that was always there when he saw her. The permanent, unreasonable, completely sustainable love that Gerald Marsh had looked at and seen only a pressure point. She got in the car. How was Monday? Long. But good. He pulled out into traffic. How was yours? Cassidy apologized about the project. Yeah? She said she should have done her part and she was sorry. And I said it was okay, and she said thank you. Lily considered this. It was a very mature conversation. You're a very mature person. I know. She settled into the seat. Is Victoria coming to dinner? Ryan glanced in the mirror. What? She seemed like she might want to come to dinner again sometime. Lily, I'm just saying. She ate 3 slices of pizza, which is a lot. It means she liked it. 3 slices of pizza is not a dinner invitation. It's not a dinner invitation. Ryan drove and did not respond to this, which Lily correctly interpreted as response. She looked out the window with the satisfaction of someone who has made a point and is allowing it to settle. He drove home in the last of the Monday evening light, and the city moved around them, and his daughter was in the back seat. And somewhere on the north side of town, in a 12-room house that was slowly becoming less empty, a woman was taking off her coat and setting down her phone and, for the first time in 4 years, deciding what she actually wanted for dinner. Not what was efficient, not what was easy, what she actually wanted. That was something. It was, Ryan thought, quite a lot. 6 months is not a long time in the life of a legal investigation. It is, however, a long time in the life of a person who has been waiting for the ground to stop shifting. By the time March arrived, the formal proceedings against Gerald Marsh had moved through 3 separate hearings, accumulated over 400 pages of documented evidence, and generated enough press coverage that Ryan had stopped reading the articles entirely, not because they were inaccurate, but because reading about the version of yourself that exists in a news story is a particular kind of that doesn't get easier with repetition. The Financial Tribune ran a piece in January that named him, not as a suspect, not as a peripheral figure as the person whose testimony had been, in the words of Margaret Vasquez quoted directly, instrumental in establishing the premeditated nature of the scheme. The parking garage. The packages. Lily's name and grade spoken out loud in a concrete structure by a man who had spent weeks building a file on a single father who drove his boss to events and went home to his daughter and asked nothing from anyone. Ryan read that article once, in the kitchen, at midnight, and then he folded the paper, an actual paper. He'd bought it from the stand outside the building. Old habit, and put it in the drawer where he kept things that mattered. The one text that had found him after the article ran from a number he didn't immediately recognize, said, "I saw the piece. You did a brave thing, Daniel Reyes, Portland." He had sat with that for a long time. He'd written back, "She's worth being brave for." Daniel had responded, "I know. I should have fought harder when I had the chance." "Glad you did." Ryan had saved that exchange in the same drawer. The Hale Industries Employee Support Program launched on the first Tuesday in February, which was also, not coincidentally, the same week that the Financial Crimes Unit formally charged Gerald Marsh on 7 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of securities fraud, and 1 count of witness tampering, the last one specifically related to the phone call from William Crane to Ryan's desk in October. The launch was quiet by design. No press event, no ribbon cutting. Victoria had been specific about that. If we make it a performance, it becomes about optics. I want it to be about the people who actually need it. The program offered emergency financial assistance for employees in crisis, medical bills, childcare gaps, housing emergencies. It offered a formal whistleblower protection structure with actual documented teeth, the kind that required legal action to override rather than just policy language on a website. And it offered, through a partnership with a local counseling network, access to mental health support for employees and their families. Ryan had spent 3 weeks in the process, sitting with Margaret's team and Victoria's operations director and 2 HR managers who had been quietly frustrated by the absence of exactly this for years. He had asked the questions that the people designing it from above always forgot to ask. What does a single parent actually need in the first 72 hours of a crisis? What stops people from using support that exists? What does protection need to look like to feel real rather than theoretical? The answers had shaped everything. On the morning of the launch, Victoria called him into her office and handed him a document. He read the title, Program Advisory Board Member Appointment. His name was on it. "This is your role is evolving." That's the formal piece of it. The rest we can figure out over time. She was standing behind her desk in the way she stood when she'd made a decision and wasn't interested in negotiating around it. "You know what people need. You know it from the inside. That's not something I can hire." "Victoria, you're still what? An employee?" "You're an employee with a formal advisory appointment to a program that's going to affect 340 people in this building." She sat down. "Unless you have a specific objection to being taken seriously, I'd like you to sign the appointment." He looked at the document. He thought about the version of himself that had sat in this office 6 months ago and listened to a woman describe a conspiracy and thought, "What do I have to offer here?" The version of himself that had done the job for 3 years being visible and asking nothing. He signed it. "Thank you," Victoria said. "You're thanking me for taking a job. I'm thanking you for not talking yourself out of it." A pause. "You were about to, maybe." "Not maybe," he looked up. She was watching him with the expression that had been developing over months into something that no longer had a category, not professional. Not the careful warmth of someone who is aware they are warming. Just direct. Just her looking at him. "You've been doing that since October," he said. "Correcting your maybes?" "Yeah. You started it." He stood and folded the appointment document and put it in his jacket pocket. He was almost at the door when she spoke again. "Ryan." He turned. "The park. The Saturday in October." She said it without framing, without building to it. "I think about it." He held her gaze. "So do I. I don't know what to do with that yet." "You don't have to do anything with it yet. At some point. At some point. Yes. But not today. Today, you launched a program for 340 people, and you charged Gerald Marsh with 7 counts, and you gave me an advisory appointment, which is a full day." He reached for the door. "Take it one thing at a time." She almost smiled. The real one. The one that had first appeared in the parking lot when Lily told her she looked nervous. "Go back to work." "Yes, ma'am." Spring came slowly that year. The way spring comes in cities, not in a single moment, but in accumulated small ones. The temperature climbing in degrees so small you didn't notice. Until one morning you walked outside without a coat and realized you'd stopped needing it. Gerald Marsh entered a guilty plea in late April. Ryan heard about it from Margaret, who called him directly, not as courtesy, but because his testimony had been part of the record. And the people who give their testimony deserve to know how the story ends. 7 counts, Margaret said. Wire fraud, securities fraud, witness tampering. He's going to serve time. The sentencing hearing is in June. And Diane Cho? She cooperated with the investigation in exchange for a reduced charge. She'll be serving a period of supervised release and paying back a significant sum. What about the money? The $11 million? Recovery is ongoing. We're at about 8.3 recovered through the frozen accounts. The rest is a pause, it's a process. But the company's financial position is solid. And Gerald's attorney? William Crane? The Bar Association is reviewing the witness tampering charge as it relates to the phone call he placed to your desk. He's not having a good spring. Ryan was sitting at his kitchen table when he got the call, a cup of coffee in front of him, the morning light coming in at the angle it came in on clear April days. He thought about the 47 minutes Victoria had talked in a parked car in October. He thought about writing notes at midnight. He thought about the server room door. And Diane Cho's face doing several things at once. Thank you for calling, Margaret. Thank you for not signing Gerald's NDA. That decision mattered. After he hung up, he sat with the coffee for a while without drinking it. Then he texted Victoria. Margaret called. Guilty plea. 7 counts. The response came back in 40 seconds. I know. She called me first. I wanted you to hear it from her directly. He smiled at the phone. Good call. I have them occasionally. A pause. Then are you okay? He thought about what okay meant now, as opposed to what it had meant 6 months ago. 6 months ago, okay had meant stable, functional, moving forward without looking too closely at what was behind. Yeah, he typed. I think I actually am good. Me too. Another pause, longer than the others. Come have dinner this week. Not the office. My house. Bring Lily. He read it twice. Bring Lily was doing a lot of work in that sentence, and they both knew it. Thursday, he typed. Thursday, she confirmed. He put the phone down and finished his coffee, and went to get Lily ready for school. And the morning was ordinary and full and exactly what it was supposed to be. Thursday came. Lily wore her good shoes without being told, which was either a coincidence or a 7-year-old's version of occasion dressing. And Ryan decided not to ask, because some things are better left as coincidences. The drive to Victoria's house took 22 minutes. Ryan had driven it hundreds of times from the driver's seat, had pulled through those iron gates and onto the long driveway so many times that the muscle memory of it lived in his hands without any input from his brain. But driving it now tonight, in his own car, not the company car, with Lily in the back seat, asking questions about how big the house was different in a way he felt in his chest rather than his hands. Is it a mansion? Lily asked. It's a big house. 12 rooms. Lily processed this. We have 6. So it's twice as big as ours. Approximately. Does she live there alone? Yes, another pause. That seems lonely. It's been getting better. They pulled through the gates and up the driveway, and the house was lit up in a way Ryan had never seen it. Warm light from the inside rather than the automatic exterior lighting that came on at dusk. Someone had made the house look inhabited rather than secured. Victoria opened the door before they reached it. She was in a dark sweater and dark pants, her hair down again. And she looked. Ryan searched for the word and found it. Lighter. Not thinner, not smaller. Lighter in the way of something that has put down weight it had been carrying so long it had stopped noticing it. Lily walked up the steps with complete confidence. Your house is twice as big as ours. I know. It's too big. I keep most of the rooms closed. Why don't you open them? I haven't had enough reason to. Lily looked at her with Mara's eyes. You should open them. I'm working on it. She stepped back and let them in. Victoria had cooked dinner herself. Once Ryan discovered when he followed the smell into the kitchen and found evidence of actual cooking, real evidence. Pots and a used cutting board and the particular comfortable chaos of a kitchen that has been used rather than staged. You cooked. Don't look at me like that. I'm not looking at you like anything. You're looking at me like you expected catering. I didn't know what to expect. I can cook. I used to cook all the time before. She stopped. Then finished it, which was new, before I decided it wasn't worth cooking for one person. Lily had already climbed onto a bar stool at the kitchen island and was examining the proceedings with approval. What did you make? Roast chicken, roasted potatoes. A salad that I'm less confident about. I like all of those things, Lily said. Good. Because I made too much. My dad always makes too much too. He says it's because he grew up in a house where not enough was a real thing, and now he overcorrects. Victoria looked at Ryan. She's very forthcoming. Always has been. It's a good quality. She turned back to the stove. Make yourselves at home. There's juice in the refrigerator. Ryan, there's wine on the counter if you want it. I'm driving. You could leave the car. The offer sat in the kitchen for a moment. Simple and practical, on the surface, and not entirely simple underneath. We'll see, Ryan said. Not maybe? He looked at her. She was looking at the stove. But the corner of her mouth was doing the thing it did. Dinner was 2 hours long and felt like 20 minutes. Lily held more than her share of the conversation, which took pressure off the adults in a way that Ryan not entirely accidental Lily's Putney part. She asked Victoria about the rooms that were closed and what was in them. She asked whether Victoria had ever had a dog. She reported the full current status of the Cassidy situation, which had evolved since October through several more conflicts and resolutions into what Lily described as a complicated friendship, which Victoria said sounded like most of the meaningful relationship she'd had as an adult. Lily considered this carefully. My mom said that the people worth keeping are the ones who are worth the complicated parts. The table went quiet. Not an uncomfortable quiet. The quiet of something being said that needs room. She was right, Victoria said. She was usually right, Lily said. Says that too. Ryan looked at his daughter and felt the thing he always felt, the permanent, unreasonable love. And underneath it now, something that had been quietly rebuilding for 6 months. Some quality of forward-looking that he'd lost for a while and had been finding his way back to in the specific company of the people at this table. Lily, he said. She looked at him. Your mom would have liked tonight. She thought about it the way she thought about things that mattered fully, without rushing. Yeah, she said. She would have. Then she looked at Victoria. She would have liked you. She liked people who were real even when it was hard. Victoria looked at Lily for a long moment. I'm going to take that as the best compliment I've received in a long time. It is, Lily said simply, and went back to her potatoes. After dinner, Lily fell asleep on the couch in the sitting room off the kitchen, the only room on the ground floor that felt completely lived in, with books on the shelves that had actually been read, and a lamp at the right angle for reading, and a couch that had clearly been chosen for comfort rather than appearance. She fell asleep with the television on low and the rabbit, Lily's actual rabbit from home, which she had brought without informing Ryan, until they were halfway here, tucked under her arm. Ryan carried a blanket from the chair and put it over her and stood watching her breathe for a moment, the way he always did. Victoria was behind him in the doorway. She does that fast, she said quietly. Always has. She decides she's done and she's just done. I was never like that as a child. I could never turn off. You've gotten better at it. A little. They moved back to the kitchen and Ryan poured the last of the wine into her glass, and they sat at the kitchen island across from each other. And outside the kitchen windows, the city was doing what it did, lit up. Indifferent, beautiful, in the particular way of things that don't require anything from you. Can I tell you something? Victoria said. Yes. When I got in the car that night in October, when I asked you not to take me home. She turned the wine glass slowly. I didn't plan to tell you anything. I needed to not be alone. But I couldn't ask anyone I knew. Everyone I knew wanted something from me. Needed something from me. Or they were involved in the thing I was trying to think through. She looked up. You were the only person who was just there. Without an agenda. Without needing anything from me. I needed my job. You know what I mean. I do. I didn't know it was going to. She paused. Chose the words carefully, the way she always chose things carefully. With the precision of someone who has learned that words put down incorrectly are hard to pick back up. I didn't know that one night was going to change what I thought was possible. Ryan held her gaze. What did you think was possible before? Stability. Competence. Managing things well enough that I didn't have to feel the absence of anything else. A pause. I thought that was enough. I'd convinced myself it was enough. And now? Now I know it isn't. She said it without drama. Without framing. And I know that knowing it isn't enough is terrifying. Because the alternative requires things I'd decided not to want anymore. Like what? She looked at him for a long moment. Like letting someone matter. Like building something that isn't just the company. Like she stopped. Like opening the rooms. He thought about Lily on the steps, telling her to open the rooms. The way Victoria had said, I'm working on it, not deflecting. Not managing. Actually answering. You already started, he said. I know, the Saturday at the park. Dinner tonight. The program, he paused. Those are rooms you opened, yes, how did it feel? She looked at the wine glass. Like something I was afraid of, that turned out to be the thing I needed. The kitchen was quiet around them. Down the hall, Lily was asleep on the couch, with her rabbit and her good shoes still on. Outside, the city was doing what cities do. Indifferent and luminous, and completely unaware of the specific, particular thing happening in this kitchen. I'm not going anywhere, Ryan said. She looked up. I'm not saying that as I mean it practically. I'm not afraid of complicated. I'm not afraid of slow. I'm not afraid of you being exactly who you are, which is someone who operates at a high temperature and doesn't open easily and has spent 4 years behind walls that were built for good reasons. He held her gaze. I've been a single father for 4 years. I know how to be patient with something worth being patient for. The silence that followed was the kind that doesn't need to be filled. I don't know exactly what this is, she said finally. Neither do I. That should probably be more frightening than it is. We did something considerably more frightening in October, with considerably less information. She looked at him. Then she did the thing that was her version of a full smile, the one that started in her eyes before it reached her mouth. The one that only appeared when she had stopped managing herself for a moment and was just present in whatever she was feeling. We did, and it worked out. It worked out, she agreed. He stayed until 10:30. Carried Lily to the car half asleep, the rabbit tucked under her arm. Lily murmuring something about the duck at the pond that made no sequential sense. Buckled her in. Victoria stood at the top of the steps. Thank you for dinner, he said. Thank you for coming. Open another room this week. She looked at him. Which one? Whichever one you've been walking past. A pause. There's a room on the second floor that has good light. I haven't used it in 2 years. Open that one. Okay, good night. Victoria. Good night, Ryan. He got in the car and drove down the long driveway and through the iron gates. And in the back seat, Lily was mostly asleep and murmuring. And the city came up around them, the way it always did, loud and lit and moving, and Ryan drove home through all of it, with the particular feeling of someone who has arrived, somewhere they didn't know they were headed, and found it to be more than they'd allowed themselves to hope for. Almost a year to the day from the night it began. Ryan drove back to Riverside Park. Not for any particular reason. Not marking anything deliberately. He had dropped Lily at a birthday party and had an hour, and he found himself heading there, the way you find yourself heading toward places that meant something before you've consciously decided to go. He parked in the same lot, walked the same path. The city looked different in September than October, the trees fuller, the light warmer and lower. The geese that Lily had decided had a social hierarchy still there, still apparently navigating their hierarchy, unbothered. He sat on the bench where he and Victoria had sat in October and thought about the distance between then and now. Gerald Marsh had been sentenced in June. 5 years. The courtroom had been quiet in the way courtrooms are quiet when something final is happening. Ryan had been there, seated behind Margaret and Victoria, And when the sentence was read, he had felt, not triumph, but the particular settling of something that has been waiting to settle the completion of a thing. The formal close of an account that had been left open too long. Victoria had not celebrated. She had walked out of the courthouse and stood on the steps in the Septembered and June air and said, quietly, to no one in particular, Daniel Reyes should have been here. And then she'd taken out her phone and called him. Ryan had stood a respectful distance away and watched her talk, watched her face do the work of saying something real to someone she'd wronged and hadn't stopped owing. When she'd hung up, she'd come back to where he was standing, and she'd said, he said, he's glad it's over. He said he's been watching the coverage and he's proud of how it was handled. That's generous. He's a generous person. I didn't protect that well enough when I had it. She'd looked out at the street. I'm going to do better. I know. I am. I mean it as a concrete thing, not Victoria. I know. She had looked at him with the expression that no longer needed a category. They had taken Lily for ice cream after, which Lily had described as the appropriate response to a that involved a courtroom, and Ryan had not disagreed. Sitting on the bench in September, Ryan thought about all of it, the park in October, the rain on the windshield, the 4 words that had come from the back seat and changed the direction of everything. Don't take me home yet. He thought about the choice he'd made to pull over at a place where other people could see them. The choice Victoria had made to say something true instead of nothing. The chain of small choices that followed, each one building on the last, each one requiring the particular courage of someone who has decided that what's on the other side of a closed door is worth the risk of opening it. The people you dismiss, the people you wall off, the people you calculate are expendable or peripheral or too ordinary to matter to the direction of things. Gerald Marsh had built an entire scheme on the foundation of that calculation, had looked at a quiet, steady man who drove a car and raised a daughter, and assumed that what he saw was the whole of it. He had been catastrophically wrong, because the quiet, steady man had also spent 4 years learning what it meant to choose something every morning when choosing was hard. Had learned, in the specific school of loss and love and single parenthood, that the people who change the direction of things are not always the loudest or the most powerful or the most positioned. Sometimes they are simply the people who are paying attention when everyone else is performing. The people who choose, in the decisive moment, to be honest instead of careful. His phone buzzed. Victoria, where are you? He looked at the message, then at the park around him. Riverside. The bench. A pause. The bench. Yeah. A longer pause. I'll be there in 15 minutes. He put the phone in his pocket, leaned back on a bench, and looked at the water, which was catching the late afternoon light, the way water catches late afternoon light indifferently, perfectly, without effort. 14 minutes later, he heard footsteps on the path. She sat down beside him without preamble, without ceremony, the way you sit down beside someone you've earned the right to sit beside. She was in a coat he recognized, the dark one from the Saturday in October, and her hair was down and she sat close enough that their shoulders were almost touching. For a while they didn't say anything. The water moved. A pair of joggers passed. The geese negotiated their hierarchy in the reeds near the far bank. I opened the room, she said. The one with the good light? Yes. I put a chair in it, a reading chair and a lamp. A pause. I read in it last Sunday for 2 hours it was. She searched for the word. Good. It was good, yeah? I'd forgotten what it was like. To just sit somewhere for no reason, except that it was pleasant. She looked at the water. Lily would say I needed something worth having feelings about. She's usually right. She's exactly right. Victoria was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about what you said last night. About not being afraid of slow. It wasn't last night. I know. I've been thinking about it since you said it. She turned and looked at him directly. I'm not afraid of it either. I want you to know that. I know I present as someone who needs to have the shape of things defined before she can move forward. But this, whatever this is, I don't need it defined. I just need it to be real. It's real, yes. She held his gaze. It is. The bench was the same bench. The park was the same park. But the 2 people on it were not the same 2 people who had been here a year ago. And the difference between then and now was not Gerald's guilty plea or the $11 million, or the program, or the formal resolution of any of the large, complicated things that had needed resolving. The difference was that a woman had whispered 4 words in the back of a car, and a man had chosen to listen, and in that listening, something had been allowed to begin that had no category except the oldest one, the one that requires you to show up, to stay, to choose again the next morning. To believe that what's on the other side of the closed door is worth the fear of opening it. "I'm glad you asked me not to take you home," Ryan said. She looked at him. "So am I." The light on the water moved the way it always moved, catching, releasing, indifferent and beautiful. The city rose around the park on all sides, loud and lit and alive. Somewhere across town, a 7-year-old named Lily was at a birthday party, probably negotiating something, probably right about it. Victoria shifted on the bench until their shoulders were touching. Ryan didn't move away. They sat like that in the September afternoon and watched the water and said nothing more. Because some things don't need to be said, they only need to be lived. Slowly and honestly and without apology, by 2 people who have chosen, in the end, to stop being afraid of what they need. And that was enough. That was finally more than enough.